what happened. And let me tell you folks, they always tell us that it's safe, and no one comes back. And the people of New Mexico and places like Utah, where Carmen is, we just recently got a bill passed in Congress that will never fulfill all that we've lost. Never. We talk all the time about the obvious physiological effects of being overexposed to radiation. It's illness, it's cancer, it's death. But what we never talk about are the socioeconomic or financial effects of being overexposed to radiation. $100,000 doesn't come close enough. Very soon, a new bill has been introduced in Congress, and very soon we begin our fight all over again for more through the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. And so there are consequences to that, and oftentimes it's human life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tina, in spent fuel storage, reactors, and Generation 4 reactors. Our panelists are John McCloy, Professor and Lindner Chair in Materials Engineering at Washington State University, Photonics, and Fred Monet, University of Utah. Moderating is Dr. Greg Yasko, former chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Well, welcome everybody to this. I think will be a very interesting panel. Hopefully we'll make it interesting. My name is Greg Yasko. I'm just going to say a few words and then I will turn it over to each of the panelists. Should you introductions? Okay, to do brief introductions. Oh, sorry. And then we'll go into some questions and talk about some of these areas and doing a tour of plants in California, and I came here, then I went up to Diablo Canyon. I did not know I would come back. San Onofre is actually one of the few plants I've been back to more than once in my life. The first time then that I came back was after the incident with their steam generators. And little did I know that at that point, this would then be a place that I would come back to more than that, because the issues here are ongoing. This site is very unique in it is a naturally beautiful location. It's also uniquely situated among very large population centers and right smack between the coast and a major highway. So that is a unique characteristic of this site. And it has gone through a number of challenges and difficulties. Probably the most recent, obviously, is the concern about what to do with spent fuel at this site. And others this morning have talked about the hazards and the challenges, and yet whether we are going to be able to deal with our nuclear waste challenges. Because of any site in the country, the focus on this panel, we've heard this morning about San Onofre challenges, and I kind of envisioned as my kids have gotten to watching F1 racing. And I think we're a little bit like SMRs for to the new generation without any real solution for nuclear waste. And while we may get laughed at the back of the field, the needs of San Onofre are not any less in dealing with the spent nuclear fuel. So what hopefully we'll focus on in this panel is what these new challenges will be, both from a technological standpoint, from a policy standpoint, as well as the new tools that we have to try and resolve some of these issues and address these issues. So we are in a situation in which San Onofre is not unique in having orphan waste, but it is unique in the hazards that orphan waste presents. So I can't remember who it was that said this morning, but the first thing we have to do, the number one rule of holes, is when you're in one to stop digging. And as a nation, we are in a nuclear waste hole, and we need to stop digging. But we will talk about where and the
state when I was in high school. then moved to the East Coast to go to MIT, where I first learned about material science and engineering, but I also got fascinated with archaeology and with long-term effects of humanity on the planet. Then became an engineer briefly back in Seattle, and got really disillusioned with engineering, and so decided to study anthropology, and so went to Arizona. Ended up working for a defense contractor there for 8 years, and also going back and doing a social science degree, studying people and their effects of technology. And ended up at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Eastern Washington, where I first found out about Hanford. And I knew a little bit about it when I got there. I wasn't hired to work in that area. Years of my career have basically been focused on trying to be what I tell students, a glorified garbage man. And the future of nuclear energy. The fact of the matter is that we have this waste and we have to take care of it. And you know, what we're here to reactors, what most of what I worry about is the legacy defense waste from weapons production. Washington State University, which is really on new students to understand these problems, so that, you know, because as we know, these are 100, 200, 1,000-year problems, and so, you know, the best to train the next generation. I have 3 sons. The one slide that I thought about putting up that I didn't was a slide I used to always start my talks with, which is a cartoon that I found, and it's a man with his young son. He's leaning down and he's looking across this expanse of green glowing drums. And he says, "Someday, son, this will all be yours." And so I have taken that to heart, and my oldest son is a chemical engineering student, my middle son is a nuclear engineering student, and most likely my youngest son will be an environmental engineer. So, you know, this is beyond any one of us, and so we need to hear a lot of different voices, and so...
Hello, Sue. I'm a postdoctoral research associate at University of Pittsburgh. I also take economics, a spin-off from university. And then my background is in material science also, and then optics, and then instrumentation. What we're doing is we're developing a continuous monitoring technology using optics, especially fiber optics. And I've been doing this for different energy applications, including mostly for grid, electrical assets monitoring, like the distribution transformer you see on pole top. That's one that we're really interested in. Is integrated for these assets, and then we try to use fibers to embed it in those assets to monitor, because those are medium and high voltage applications where electrical sensitizations, those battery storage that we're and it is that lithium batteries to predict the 15-20 minutes before it happened. So that fibers to detect the microscopic cracks on the canister structure, the steel structure that is hosting those fuel rods. These oil and gas industries where they worry about the leakage of methane gas from natural gas pipelines. And so, yeah. And technology would
And then Fred, maybe just a brief introduction. We actually need to start digging. We have, I think, repositories have monitoring teams. So maybe how does that look to you when an interim storage facility?
Yeah, thanks for the question. One thing I didn't mention is that one of the things that I've been involved with in the last 6 or 7 years is really looking at the international community and understanding how other countries are handling these kinds of problems. And so I've been kind of keeping my eyes on some of these permanent disposal facilities that have advanced in other countries. And for example, the one in Finland, which is going to open this year, where they're replacing spent fuel in Onkalo. I got to visit there a couple of years ago. The philosophy of disposal is different depending on where you live. And in Finland, it's bury it and forget it. And most of these disposal facilities are all do monitoring during operation, and some of them during what's called a period. Some of them, like CGO in France, which is going to be in Clay, which should begin operating. They have in their rules 100 years to in their philosophy. In terms of any kind of consolidated, you can't get away with technology you have available. The other examples that I looked at were things like at Hanford, there's a facility called the Integrated Disposal Facility. And so at Hanford, they have 177 underground tanks that include both. It's always hard after lunch. People are falling asleep. I'm putting myself to sleep. Anyway, low activity waste, we're making glass out of this radioactive waste, and it's being stored on site because we can do that, because by law we can store some things on site. And it's essentially a shallow landfill. It's a highly engineered landfill, and they're monitoring things like pH and different ion concentrations. It's an engineered barrier, and they have some wells where they're monitoring groundwater, and this is one of the biggest challenges, as you know, with any kind of permanent facility, whether it's 100 years or 1,000 years. But once you get beyond, a couple hundred years, the error bars on any kind of model are so huge that it almost doesn't mean anything. And so there's some problems with our policies that require this kind of monitoring.
And maybe Fred, as a health physicist, you can touch on that idea. For Yucca Mountain, the Department of Energy spent billions, hundreds of millions of dollars to develop computer models to predict the radionuclides that would come out of Yucca Mountain in 1 million years or 600,000 years, whatever the time frame was. So of course, there's got to be some monitoring, right, of that, or does that whole concept even make sense? I mean, how do we think about repositories that are going to have, in a sense, useful lives of hundreds of thousands of years? What does that idea of monitoring even mean? It doesn't make sense to even do these models. How do you get the public confidence in a facility like that without doing it but by the same token, how does it have any meaning from a kind of a scientific perspective?
It's a great question. His job lasted 2 years because it was killed by solution. And Yakima was forced to model doses to the population 1 million years in the future. And the uncertainties are so great. You end up where we are now, you're storing stuff all over the country, which is a worse solution. You're starting to get on geologic time a little bit. Is a requirement that I never, and there's a lot of value. I'm going to do a shameless plug here. So Utah is going all out with nuclear, and I've recently put together a proposal. I think before that happens, that Utah, so it's not the waste, but it is about the future of nuclear.
Segues very nicely. Dr. Sue, perhaps you can talk a little bit about your current fuel and building that confidence to get the interim storage solutions we have from a monitoring perspective. Problem that you convince with the challenges and the weaknesses with monitoring and what we have solutions to improve that.
Yeah, so maybe